Hey everybody, today we're going to be talking about the priests. It's one of the last times that Yahushua addresses the priests in Leviticus, and we're starting to come to the end of Leviticus. We've only got a few more videos left, but notice he talks about the general people, population, how they had to approach him, and the priests, what they had to do about it. When everybody starts approaching, what are you guys going to do about it? Because remember, the priests, their sole purpose was to open the doorway for Yahushua to dwell in the camp. Everything that the priests had to do in regards to that tabernacle and the altars and the furniture was to usher in the presence of Yahushua and keep him there. Keep the door open. Keep the portal open. The portal archway. Because that tabernacle was the only place on this earth where Yahushua had taken back a piece of his time and space. So if they just went, stuff this, when we're not doing the animal stuff where, we'll just do whatever we want, you should just zoop and you go. He wouldn't be in their camp. Many times it happened, as we're going to read on. But just because we're reading about priests, don't fall into the trap of thinking that he's talking to us. Oh, but we're kings and priests and da-da-da-da. Just because all scripture is suitable and for our training and instruction and discipline and teaching and all these things, don't for a second think that he's actually talking to us. We're gleaning from the behaviors, and most of all we're learning about how Yahushua feels about behavior. But he's not actually addressing us. To start with, we're not priests of Lewi, we're not Levitical priesthood. We are priests under the tribe of 𝗪𝗪𝗧𝗪, the order of 𝗪𝗪𝗧𝗪. Which is a much higher calling, much higher priesthood. It's Yahushua's priesthood. I wonder if that's what the priesthood is called in his dimension. Who knows? We're not told. There's a high priest and a priesthood in this dimension. Maybe there's one up there, in there as well. So not for us to know. But anyway, we're priests under the order of 𝗪𝗪𝗧𝗪, which is really just a way of saying Yahushua's priests. We do what he says. So in the 21st century today, it's important to read this in context. It's great. I mean, this has been phenomenal for me, blowing my brains out, seeing how much relevance it does have for today. But I'm not reading this assuming that I'm one of these priests, because I'm not. Anyway, let's go into it. There's a lot of interesting stuff here. But just keep the context of today, behavior, 21st century. What is it we're supposed to do, Father? All priests came from the tribe of Lewi, but not all Lewites were priests. Only certain families from within the tribe of Lewi were eligible to become priests. And there were different classes of priests, consisting of lesser priests, greater priests, and one high priest, with each class required to come from a specific family or group of families. So I didn't know that. I just assumed that all the people in the tribe of Lewi were priests. Not true. They were servicing the tabernacle, but they weren't all priests. The high priest had to come from Aaron's line, and each of the classes of priests had certain duties assigned to them. I'm going to come more into that when we get to Numbers. So, lesser duties and greater duties. Only the greater priests were allowed to approach the altar and officiate over the sacrifices. The lesser priests, on the other hand, did more menial work, such as assembling and disassembling the tabernacle whenever Israel broke camp and moved to a different location. They were also responsible for cleaning up the enormous amounts of blood and ashes that accumulated every day. I'm going to go more into that when we read the book of Numbers, go through that. But so we come to more instructions for the priests. Then Yahushua said to Moshe, "Give the following instructions to the priests, the descendants of Aaron. A priest must not make himself unclean by touching the dead body of a relative. The only exceptions are his closest relatives, mother, father, son, daughter, brother, his virgin sister, who depends on him because she has no husband. Directly related family, not someone who is related to him only by marriage. Death is an unnatural abomination to Yahushua, for it should never exist, and so he needs to be set apart from it. Just as light cannot be in the presence of darkness, neither can life be around death. When the scripture speaks of eternity, it's not referring to a really, really long time, but merely an existence outside of time. For time is really just a record of death. So without death, there is no time. And that's where Yahushua exists, outside of time. How spectacular is that? He can't even be in the presence of death. That's why wherever he went, he just healed people, brought people back to life. You know, he is the epitome and the essence of all life. That's what they felt when they looked in his eyes. Life. Overwhelming, intoxicating, drunken life. Just, you know, it was shining off Moshe's faith. So what are we talking about here? How the priests can become unclean. Which, you know, when A, we're not these sort of priests, Levitical priests, and B, we don't have to be in fear of becoming unclean anymore because we're washed in the blood of Yahushua. We do want to please him though, so keep that in your mind. We don't want to do things that he hates, things that he considers an abomination. So they are not to touch any relatives, only direct family if they've died. It's all part of the mourning thing. He doesn't want them getting into the whole pagan mourning rituals of ripping your clothes and shaving your head and pulling out your beard and gashing and gnashing and wailing and weeping, all this stuff that they used to go on with, that the pagans used to do. He doesn't want them being like the pagans. That's the takeaway here. Don't be like the pagans. Don't be like the world. And having said that, he says the priests must not shave any bald places on their heads, referring to bald spots on the crown mainly, or trim the corners of their beards, sideburns, or make cuttings in their flesh, tattoos or piercings. They must be set apart to me and never bring shame on my name. They must be set apart, for they are the ones who present the special gifts of food and sacrifice to me. Those special gifts of food and sacrifice were what pleased Yahushua and ensured that he would open the portal, that he would be there. His presence would be on the mercy seat, the lid of atonement. So they were in charge of keeping the portal open. That was their job. Do everything Yahushua requires of us, all these sacraments and rituals and everything, so that the doorway will stay open. You know? And back then, all the pagan priests used to do all this sexuality and shaving bits and plucking out, you know, all this weird religious stuff. And so he's saying, be separate. Don't be like them. It's got nothing to do today, in the 21st century, with fashion. Whether you wear clothes or robes, shoes or sandals, whether you shave your head or have long hair. As a man these days, you can have short hair, long hair, short beard, long beard, no beard. Moustache, you want to go French, you know, like there's so much you can do these days in men's grooming. It has nothing to do with being ceremonially unclean. All right? Nothing to do with it. We dealt a lot of this in our last episode, but for those who want to bring it up again and say, no, we are required to do this because we are priests. We're not Levitical priests. So, and it gives me the tom tits when people just, the only thing they'll have to say at the bottom of your video is, I can't take you seriously because you don't have a beard. You've just had a haircut and shaved all the sides of your, you're not supposed to shave your hair off to start with. Who are you? Nice to meet you. And, you know, mind your bloody business. Piss off, you know? Get a life. Nothing to do with any of this. It actually shows me how immature and ignorant the person is for not actually researching and listening to Yahushua's voice, who clearly would not be interested in any of this sort of thing. You think he's going to turn you away because you've got tattoos on your body, because you've got piercings, or, you know, whether you like them or not is irrelevant to whether they're permitted or not. So, moving on, otherwise I'll just get angry. Move on. Because these things, here it's written here, because these things were performed at pagan Canaanite funeral rituals, and Yahushua forbids his priests to behave in such a way even during formal mourning periods or any time. He doesn't want us behaving, weeping and wailing and going on like the pagans, like the world does. The world is devastated at everything. The world, you don't have to look sideways at someone in the world and they're devastated. I'm emotionally, you know, I'm anxious, I've got anxiety, I'm this, I'm that. Everybody's just, you know, held together by a thread, their sanity. So of course, if someone dies, it's just the end of the world, weeping and wailing and visiting the grave for months and months, and, you know, like it's, let the dead bury the dead, Yahushua said. So while we are not these priests, it does show us behaviour, like it shows us how Yahushua felt about his priests being set apart from the world. That's the key here. for us to be set apart from the world. Not whether you have a beard or not, but your behaviour has to be set apart from the world. Don't behave like they do. And I'm going to summarise at the end of the episode and pull all these points together. But let's go on. So don't be like the pagan priests. Priests may not marry a woman ever defiled by prostitution, because she's sexually unclean. And they may not marry a woman who is divorced from her husband either, because she's sexually clean also, because the only reason a husband was permitted to divorce his wife was if she had been adulterous. So if a woman was divorced back then, it means that her husband must have divorced her for being adulterous, being a whorebag. So a priest back here was not to marry a divorced woman or a prostitute. He wanted his priest to be set apart, and sexuality was used in the pagan temples and openly accepted, all forms of it. And he wanted his priests to be pure in this way, not allow any of that to come into the family. So priests are to be set apart to me, and you must treat them as such because they offer up food and sacrifice to me. You must treat them, whenever you see offering up food and sacrifice, keeping the portal open. Keeping the portal open. So you must treat them as set apart because I, Yahuwah, am set apart. And I make you set apart also. You can't make yourself set apart. I've declared you set apart. Let me say, in case I forget, while it's not our job today to keep the portal open, though it is within us, we can get out of the way. Yahushua says you stand in the doorway, always focusing on yourself instead of just getting out of the way. Open the door for people and let them go in. Not standing there with all your wants and wares, and here you must read this and you must get that and you must buy this and you must come to me, you must assemble with us and you must visit my site and you must do this and you must do that. No, just if you're in a circumstance and you're called to say something, say it, open the door and bugger off. Yahushua will do the rest. If the person comes back and asks you questions, answer questions and bugger off and get out of the way. Let Yahushua do his work in the door. You're in the doorway, standing in the doorway. So that's my connection with this. While we don't have the power to open or close the door, we can get in the way. Get out of the doorway. Stop standing in the doorway. The doorway is open for us through his blood. It's just a matter of whether we choose to walk in or not, whether we choose to communicate to the throne room of the higher dimension. If a priest's daughter defiles herself by becoming a prostitute, she also defiles her father's set apartness. She must be burnt to death. That's how he feels about prostitutes. Some people like to argue, is it a temple prostitute or is it a common prostitute? This or that, because Yahushua permitted common ones but not temple ones. There's all those great arguments there, but look, just don't become one. Sex is marriage. So if you're selling the service of sex, it's not good. The high priest has the highest rank of all the priests, having had the anointing oil poured on his head and ordained to wear the priestly garments. Yahushua is our high priest. He was anointed with the ruach, wearing the high priestly garments. He must never leave his hair uncombed. Come to my salon, guys, and buy some combs. All of you have to come and buy combs. That's the new movement. Come and buy combs and brushes, because priests aren't allowed to keep their hair uncombed. If you've got messy hair, you won't make the first resurrection. Insane, isn't it? It's no more insane than half the other things I hear going on out there. It's got nothing to do with hair, guys. Mess up your hair, spike up your hair, whatever. It's got to do with mourning like the pagans do, worshipping the dead. So he had the anointing oil. He must never leave his hair uncombed or tear his clothing or defile himself by going near a dead body. So this is the high priest now. Even his father or mother cannot go near a dead body. Death is unnatural. Death is an abomination to you. You can't be near it. And he must not defile my sanctuary by leaving it to attend to a dead person, for he has been made set apart by my anointing oil. I am Yahuwah. The high priest may only marry a virgin, not a widow, not a divorced woman or a prostitute. She must be a virgin from his own clan, so that he will not dishonour his descendants. So we're talking about bloodlines and mixing bloodlines now. Doesn't like mixing. I am Yahuwah who makes him set apart. So this is the guy who is, the mediator between Yisrael and Yahusha. So, in all your future generations, none of your descendants who have any defects, blind, lame, disfigured, deformed, broken foot or arm, hunchback, dwarf, defective eyes, skin sores or scabs, damaged testicles, there you go, will qualify to offer food to me or even approach the altar to present special gifts to me. Okay. However, he may eat from the food offered to me, including the set-apart offerings and most set-apart offerings. Yet because of his physical defects, he may not enter the room behind the inner curtain or approach the altar, for this would defile my set-apart places. For I am Yahuwah who makes them set apart. And in the turquoise here, set-apartness equals wholeness and perfection. Shalom, set-apartness. An overall sense of wholeness and perfection. It's tied up in that word shalom again. So obviously in this time, day and age, blindness, lame, disfigured, deformed, broken foot, arm, hunchback, dwarf, defective eye, skin sores, scabs, damaged testicles, all those things implied, all those physical ailments implied a lack of set apartness, implying a sense of disobedient behaviour in a sense, which is, today that is not relevant to us. All who are broken may come and drink. So Moshe gave these instructions to Aaron and his sons and to all the children of Israel. Tell Aaron and his sons to be very careful with the special gifts that the Israelites set apart to me, for me. Even in all future generations, make sure none of your descendants are unclean when they approach the special offerings, so they don't bring shame on my set apart name. For I am Yahuwah, and I'll cut them off from my presence if they're not careful. They have to be careful. Don't get drunk, don't go stumbling around the set apart place, doing what you want, or you'll be struck dead. You'll be cut off. Got to be very careful. If any of Aaron's descendants has any of these things, he may not eat from the special offerings until he has been pronounced clean. A skin disease, any kind of discharge, if he's touched a corpse, had an emission of semen, touched an unclean person or animal. The man who is defiled in any of these ways will remain unclean until evening, till the sun goes down, and can't eat from the special offerings, his food, until he has bathed himself in water. I'm not going into all these, we've dealt with these in previous episodes, the water and the skin, all that stuff. He can't eat any animal that has died a natural death either, or has been torn apart by wild animals, for this would defile him. I am Yahuwah. Remember these defilements, we're talking about what takes someone out of the set apart cloud to the common and clean to the common and unclean. So something could take a priest from being set apart to just common, and he still can't go into the set apart place. So while it may not be disobedient behaviour, if you touch an unclean animal or a dead body or things like that, you're in this middle cloud, unclean, not unclean, just common. You can't go in the set apart place. So 3 levels, the ladder, jumping up and down the ladder. Priests must follow my instructions carefully, otherwise they will be punished for their disobedience and will die for violating my instructions. I am Yahuwah who makes you set apart. Tax that on the end of every paragraph. It's like why? Because I am Yahuwah. This is all the power you need, authority, legitimacy you need, my name. No one outside a priest's family may eat the special offerings, even guests and hired workers in a priest's home, because they're set apart. However, if the priest buys a slave for himself, the slave may eat from the special offerings. And if his slave has children, they also may share his food. If a priest's daughter marries someone outside the priestly family, she may no longer eat the special offerings, but if she becomes a widow or is divorced and has no children to support her, and she returns to live in her father's home, as in her youth, then she may eat her father's food again. Otherwise, no one outside a priest's family may eat the special offerings. This ties in with the offerings, guys, and some of the offerings, mainly the intimate peace offering, they could use as food as well. But that was only for the priest. So what qualifies as a priest? This is what we're talking about. You can't just, the priest can't just invite all their mates around and we're having a nosh up of, lamb today. No, it's got to be specific people, only your close family. Any such person who eats the special offerings without realising it may pay the priests for the amount eaten. Must pay the priest for the amount eaten, plus an additional 20%. The Priests must not let the Israelites defile my special offerings brought to me by allowing unauthorized people to eat them. This would bring guilt upon them and require them to pay compensation. I am Yahuwah who makes you set apart. So this special food, the leftovers from the offerings or the offerings themselves, were only for the priests and their families, direct families, because they had to eat too. The priests didn't have their own farms and, living. They didn't make their own living or earning. They were serving the tabernacle, so they were fed through the offerings of the tabernacle and their direct families. The idea that you could earn or work your way into a state of set-apartness was the standard pagan belief at the time, thinking that if you ate the food of the gods in some magical way, you also became accepted. That's what they used to believe. However, in stark contrast, Yahushua is saying that it's only He that makes us set apart, nothing else. No eating or drinking or behavior or obedience sets them apart. He set them apart. He declared it. These are the children of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Jacob in slavery, worshipping idols, doing all the wicked, abominable behaviors and practices, all of them known to man. But they are my set-apart people. Why? Because I say so, and I'm going to deliver them on the blood of the Passover lamb. If you didn't put your blood on the doorpost, you didn't get delivered. So that was what made them delivered. Nothing they did or said or behaved or obedient or disobedient. Same for us today. And I'll go into that a little bit later. Acceptable offerings. And Yahushua said to Moshe, give Aaron and his sons, all the Israelites, these instructions which apply both to native Israel and to the foreigners living among you. If you present a gift as a sending near offering to me, whether it is to fulfill a vow or a voluntary offering, you will be accepted only if your offering is a male animal with no defects. It may be a bull, a ram, a male goat, but don't present an animal with defects, because I won't accept it on your behalf. If you present an intimate peace offering to me from the herd or the flock, whether it is to fulfill a vow or a voluntary offering, you must offer a perfect animal, having no defect of any kind. You must not offer an animal that is blind, crippled, or injured, or that has a wart, skin sore, or scabs, for such animals must never be offered on the altar as a special gift to me. If a bull or lamb has a leg that is too long or too short, it may be offered as a voluntary offering, but it may not be offered to fulfill a vow. And if an animal has damaged testicles or is castrated, you may not offer it to me either. You must never do this in your own land, and you must not accept such an animal from foreigners and then offer it as a sacrifice to me either. For such animals will not be accepted on your behalf, for they are mutilated or defective. The requirements to approach Yahushua are universal, not a different way for different nations or tribes. These requirements are across the board. If you're going to approach me with an offering, they've got to be perfect. When a calf or lamb or goat is born, it must be left with its mother for 7 days, and from the 8th day on it will be acceptable as a special gift to me. On the 8th day. But you mustn't slaughter a mother animal and her offspring on the same day, whether from the herd or the flock. When you bring a thanksgiving offering to me, sacrifice it properly so you will be accepted and eat the entire sacrificial animal on the day it is presented. Do not leave any of it until next morning, for I am Yahuwah. So you must obediently keep all my instructions by putting them into practice, for I am Yahuwah. So don't bring any shame on my set-apart name, for I will display my set-apartness among the people of Yisrael. I am Yahuwah who makes you set apart. It was I who rescued you from the land of Egypt, that I might be your Elohim Yahuwah. What do these patterns point to? Didn't Yahushua also have to be a blemish-free sacrifice and come from a certain people group, the tribe of Yehuda? Didn't he have to be a priest of a certain type, according to the order of Melchizedek, instead of the line of Aaron? It's all about the pattern. So we read this, I'm reading it fast, it's all about the sacrifice and the defects and the perfect animals, but look at it, what patterns do they fit into? Yahushua had to meet all these requirements. His behavior had to be perfect. He had to have no physical defects. He had to be from the right tribe, and he was from the tribe of Yehuda, the line of the kings, the royal bloodline, which had no deformities in it either. It hadn't been, this is why back in the days of Abraham, blending and intermixing with the nations was a big no-no, because he wanted to keep One bloodline that was pure, all the way to Yahusha. So it's all about the patterns. And there you go, it says there, according to the order of Melchizedek, instead of the line of Aaron. So that can let us breathe a bit of a sigh of relief when you're thinking, oh, well, I'm supposed to be, we're supposed to be kings and priests. You know, we should be doing all this. No, we can learn from all this. That's why we're going through it, to learn about Yahusha, because he doesn't change. He doesn't just transform into some New Testament Elohim that's all do what you want. No, this is how he feels about it. But when I look at how he told them to dress and not shaving and this and doing the beard and all that, I can see now, looking at it closely, that he didn't want them to look and behave like the pagan priests. So he doesn't want us to behave and look. I mean, if you're going around, you know, looking absolutely bizarre with a body covered with tattoos and big loopholes in your nose and looking like a complete freak, well, yeah, I'd say he doesn't want you looking like the nations. If you're walking around, you know, walking around with your tits hanging out like this, you know, like the nations, that's not modest dress. In those situations, I think dress is relevant. You are being a stumbling block for men if men have to consciously work 100% to keep their eyes on your eyes because you are showing so much of your flesh. I don't think that's helpful. It's not scriptural. Yahusha's bride would not behave like that. So religious people do. Christians, Messianic religion, they can do whatever they want, but and the world obviously does. But so see how you can use your own common sense and your own mind with Yahusha to decipher whether what you're doing is right or wrong, and whether these scriptures are specific for you. Whether the specific instruction is for you, I should say, as far as how do I interpret this into 21st century modern lifestyle. Are we delivered by obedience or Yahusha's favour? Big argument going on right now. Are we delivered by works or by grace? Obedience or Yahusha's favour? Yahusha has been teaching his people that it is he who declares what is clean and unclean, common and set apart. And they needed to obey him in all matters if his perfect light was to be in this darkened world. They needed to obey him if they wanted the portal. They wanted to see or feel his dimension there, his spirit among them, you know. We mustn't forget that he had already delivered them by the blood of the Passover lambs and cleansed them through the waters of the Red Sea, drawing them unto himself and declaring them set apart, through no quality, behaviour, or obedience of their own. This is how Yahusha calls all of us, and all we need to do to be considered clean and set apart in his eyes is to repent and be washed clean through immersion, claiming through belief the shed blood of Yahusha to deliver us of our disobedience and evil. That's it. No one can take our deliverance off us. He has declared you and me set apart and clean, and no one can take it off you unless we outright reject him and walk away. We are officially written in the Lamb's Book of Life, and through his blood we will be found not guilty at the great white throne judgment, the second resurrection. That's the power of his blood, a not guilty verdict. Does that mean we can do whatever we want from here on out? Technically, yes, as far as the great white throne judgment goes. I'm just going to leave that at that, and you can think about that. However, despite being delivered and considered set apart in Yahusha's eyes, Yisrael actually had to become set apart, not just be declared it, they had to become it. They had to actually become set apart if they wanted to be with Yahusha in the promised marriage home and have him in their camp. If they wanted the portal open, if they wanted direct access to the throne room, which is what Yahusha was doing on the mercy seat. So how were they actually going to be set apart, not just considered set apart? They had to be trained in set apartness to behave like a spotless bride. And as we know, most of them died in the wilderness, and only a tiny remnant of the original Yisrael entered the promised land of Canaan. The same applies for Yisrael today. Aside from the safety net of being written in the Book of Life, there is a higher calling that Yahusha desires of his true remnant bride, a small few also. those who fear him and love his name. It's the option of being written in the book of remembrance and attending the marriage supper of the Lamb after Yahushua returns to cleanse this earth with fire and gather his perfected remnant bride unto himself from the four corners of the planet. And that's called the first resurrection. So can you see there is a higher calling? Touched on it in a few videos now. Pulling the parallels between Yisrael in the wilderness to the Yisrael today. Yisrael today is everyone who's been immersed in the name of Yahushua and come out of the waters of immersion, declared and considered in his eyes, set apart and clean. That is all of Yisrael, Yahushua's chosen bride. However, what do we know about the wise and foolish virgins? So this first resurrection is a very special calling and relationship of love, where the bride wants to surrender to the desires and instructions of her bridegroom because she loves him and wants to please him, not because she wants to do it as much as she possibly can before she gets cut off. She wants to find out and know up front, how disobedient can I be before I commit to this? What's my safety net? What's my insurance here? No, she doesn't want to do as much as she can to displease him. She wants to go forward and do as much as she can to please him because she loves him, wants to please him more than anything else in this filthy world. She is exercising the down payment of his spirit within her and using it to stay clean, fighting off any obstacle or thought that attempts to knock her off the path of clean living and behaviour that he is training her on through a very personalised relationship of communication and intimacy, bringing in all the lingo from the offerings and sacrifices. I don't need to go through that again. I think you understand that. That's how the bride feels. It's a feeling of love and intimacy that she wants to continue to have with Yahushua through the portal. While her obedient behaviour isn't what delivered her, she, the bride, understands that this obedient behaviour is the very thing that will set her apart from the unwise maidens and ensure her endurance in overcoming and preparation for the greatest climactic event of her life, having enough oil, obedient behaviour and worship, burning brightly in her lamp as she travels this dark world. Do you understand that? The bride understands, Yahushua's bride knows that while it's not obedient behaviour that delivers her, it's the very thing that's going to guarantee her and set her apart from the unwise maidens, unwise virgins. It's the very thing that's going to be the oil in her lamp, her obedient behaviour. Obedient Torah, obedient behaviour is what's in her lamp, in her heart. Not just believing it and declaring it, but actually doing it, believing it, having that oil. The experience of the behaviour is stored in her lamp. And the relationship, of course. So, while it's not her behaviour that delivers her, she understands that it's the very thing that will set her apart from the unwise maidens and ensure her endurance in overcoming and preparation for the greatest climactic event of her life, having enough oil burning brightly in her lamp as she travels this dark world. Here's just a couple of references building on the foundation of set apartness we're learning here in Leviticus. In 1 Peter 2 says, as living stones you're being built into a spiritual house to be priests, set apart for Yahushua, to offer spiritual sacrifices acceptable to him. So, we are priests. We're lively stones being built into a spiritual house to be priests. But what type of priests? Shadow priests? Priests that were living in the shadows? Or priests that are living in the light? Priests that are putting enough energy into the relationship to know that was a shadow and quite useless today, actually, quite frankly. So if I do that, I'm actually just disrespecting Yahushua, really. It's not really obedience doing something written on the page if it's not relevant to you. It's stupidity. And does Yahushua like stupidity? No, he likes someone who is being intelligent with their belief and spending the time in his word and with his voice, listening to him, because he gives you all the answers. So as you're reading this, as I'm reading this, I'm going, Father, is this you know, because I had to spend some time, particularly in the last few chapters, about the tattoos and haircuts and all that sort of stuff. You know, is this just my personal opinion, my desire, or is this real? You know, because tattoos and haircuts are written in the same sentence. Tattoos and beards are written in the same sentence. And I've never come under that whole you have to have a beard thing. But I always used to declare that tattoos were evil. So I had to look at that and go, okay, well, you can't have one without the other. It's not a smorgasbord. You either believe that it's all for the priests, or that's not really relevant. So I had to come out of that now and go, okay, tattoos are fine. I'm not getting any. It's a waste of money and it's useless, it's stupid. But it's not illegal, you know? That's the point. But you've got to listen to his voice and get the right understanding. He talks to you through his word. So, you're a chosen people, the king's priests, a set-apart nation, and a people for Yahushua to possess. Why? In order for you to declare the praises of the one who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. And back when we were talking about the priests not to bury their dead, this was interesting. Another of the disciples said to Yahushua, Master, first let me go and bury my father. But Yahushua replied, follow me and let the dead bury their own dead. If anyone comes to me and does not hate his father, mother, wife, children, brothers, sisters, yes, even his own life, he cannot follow me. Does this mean we have to purposely put our time and energy into hating them? No, but this means that you put him first. No matter what happens with them, mother, father, sister, brother, wife, children, no matter what happens, you've got your eye on the prize. Doesn't mean you don't get stabbed and heartache and pain and stress and all these sort of things if you see people you love going through the system. We all see that with our wives, husbands, ex-wives, children, you know, all, you know, brothers and sisters, you know, we see it all happening on a daily basis. If you go into the world, you get chewed up and spat out. But what does Yahushua say? It's not a matter of hating them, it's a matter of loving him, you know. Hating their behaviour maybe. But you don't actually go out there, I hate you and I'm going to treat you like you, no. But it puts into perspective how Yahushua feels. If anyone comes to me and does not hate his father, mother, wife, children, brothers, sisters, yes, even his own life, he cannot follow me. And I believe those things will be tested. Maybe not on every single one of those relationships, but a certain number of those relationships will test you. Will test you. When people want to leave, when people want to accuse you, when people want to sever relationships, are you going to bow down on your knees and do anything and follow and grovel and go the way they want to go? Or are you going to stand with Yahushua? And through that behaviour, maybe affect them, maybe not. Maybe they just want to go. Maybe Yahushua's separating you from them. Who knows? If we have to be separated from everything most dearest to us on this earth in order to follow Yahushua, then so be it. For to follow him is to follow the behavioural example of the priests of Yisrael, who are not to handle dead, unclean things. Will we forsake all to follow him and gain life? Or will we cling to traditions and idolatry and gain death as our reward? Now let me make one thing clear, going through Leviticus. If you're just reading the ink on the page and being obedient to the ink on the page, I believe that you would fall under the category of clinging to traditions and idolatry. Because you can do what's on the ink on the page and still be disobedient. Doing what Scripture tells you to do, but he's not actually talking to you. But because you're in a certain mindset and in a certain movement, you're either immature, lazy, or deceived, you know, ignorant. So, okay, well, next episode we're going to go to appointed times. So that was all about the priests today. And when I was thinking about this before I recorded it, Yahushua gave me something pretty phenomenal that I want to pass on to you. Because everything is to do with priestly behaviour, behaviour that Yahushua accepts, that will in turn set us apart and allow us direct access. From his point of view, he's accepted us already. The dimensions are aligned, as far as within our hearts. But do we enter? Do we enter in? Do we communicate? Do we have that open dialogue with Yahushua? Or are we just knowing it in our head? Nothing we can do or say in our behaviour will sever that relationship. He promises to never leave us or forsake us. But our behaviour keeps us out from our end. Because no one who's darkened wants to go and be in the light unless they're willing to go humbly on their knees and repent, and then he throws it and you're allowed access again. We're the ones who cut ourselves off. We are the prodigals that run away. Adam and Eve run away from his presence because they did something wrong. We're the ones who don't come in boldly. And he just wants to have that relationship. The prodigal son came home expecting to be a slave and told off or whatever, and the father just wrapped his arms around him, gave him slaughtered the fatted calf, put a ring on his finger, put the best clothes on him, and the other son had his nose out of joint. And the father's like, you've been here serving me, helping me for yonks. This day is not about you. Can't you come into the joy? Your brother was lost. You've never been lost. You've been standing with me the whole time. You know I love you. We're working together. But your brother was lost and he's found. So we all know people in our lives who need the Father, don't we? But what can we do about it? So I want to read you this. I'll put it up behind me. I'm just going to read it down here for now. I've only written this about an hour ago. Yahushua gave me something. It's phenomenal to me. It's fresh. It's related all to this and the portal. So let's just go. In Leviticus, mankind had the ability to sever their connection with Yahushua through disobedience and abominable practices, because he simply cannot be defiled by evil, and will keep the doorway to his dimension closed to remain set apart from evil. However, if Yisrael wanted him and implemented all the patterns of behaviour he desired, he would be there. So, as with all types and shadows, patterns of behaviour, Yahushua was painting a picture of what he was going to one day do himself. That is, shed his own perfect blood from this dimension and give up his perfect ruach from the higher dimension. Remember when we talked about the fire on the altar? The fire was from his dimension and the blood was from this dimension. Well, Yahushua came into this dimension, was born into this dimension to shed his blood. It had to be human blood. It had to be perfect blood though, obedient blood. Adam failed. This was the second Adam. He had to be a human. So he shed his own blood, perfect blood from this dimension, and he had to give up his perfect ruach from the high dimension. Remember, it came on him at his immersion. The ruach came and dwelt on it as though like a dove. Remember the fire from the altar, which when mixed with blood became a place of perfection and atonement for Israel? Yahushua made atonement for mankind once and for all, and through his ultimate sacrifice, he opened the doorway to the dimensions through the rent veil of his own flesh, becoming the portal doorway to deliverance not only for Israel, but any outside nations who would graft in and reject the idolatrous behaviour of the world. The name of Yahuwah is the key of all knowledge, and this key opens or leads us to the doorway of deliverance. So when we read Yahushua's amazing words, even back here in Leviticus, through the portal connection and context of his spirit of love, we can see that while there are several practices that Yahushua considers detestable or an abomination, and thus should never be done, i.e. eating unclean animals and blood, sodomy, temple prostitution, idolatry, tree worship, etc., most of the instructions regarding outward show, ritual, ceremony, and garb are to be received by us today in the 21st century through the eyes of the customs of that era. For if Yahushua walked among us today, he would spend very little time, if any, speaking about fashion, hygiene, ritual, or our current everyday routines. Whether we should drink coffee, eat a donut, smoke a cigarette, have a beer or a wine, listen to loud music, tzitzits, shofars, hair, beards, tats, etc., all this outward stuff. which while permitted may not be good for us. Some of those things on that list may not be good for us, but they're not illegal by Torah standards, by his instructions. And that's the thing. We're all battling the devices. We're all battling our own vices of the flesh, whether they just be sugar and caffeine and, white bleached flour and hamburgers and chips and, cakes and all these things aren't good for us. But to look down your nose at someone and declare them unclean and disobedient to Scripture, that's a whole different ballgame, because everybody in their flesh is battling the vices and, things that we want to put off to be healthier. That's a different issue though, isn't it? The same is with all of it. We're talking about behaviour. So no, Yahushua wouldn't be addressing all those things unless it was an issue of modesty and sexuality. Those things are important to him. But no, he would be addressing the behaviours of set apartness and how to make ready for the wedding feast. An experience of overcoming that has nothing to do with any outward traits and everything to do with our thoughts and heart behaviour and what comes out of it through our mouths, our looks and moods and behaviours. So that's what he's more interested in. What we think in our hearts will come out of our mouth, or our body will do it. You can't just have all this private thought life to yourself and think that because you haven't said it or because you haven't done it that you are wholesome. No, it's about your thoughts. Yahushua can see hear all your thoughts. And it's only a matter of time, given them a little bit of pressure, it'll all come out anyway. Is it love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, trustworthiness, gentleness, and self-control? Because this is the behaviour he's looking for. This is the fruits that his Ruach births and grows within us if we choose to be obedient. Or is our behaviour whoring, uncleanliness, indecency, idolatry, drugs, hatred, quarrels, jealousies, fits of rage, selfish ambitions, envy, murders, drunkenness, and wild parties? While some of those things are outward signs, the behaviour is different to someone. What am I trying to say? Wild parties. Higher up in that article I mentioned listening to music or having a beer or a wine or, a cigarette or all those things. There's a difference between having these occasional things, whether they're good for you or not. There's a difference between doing that, whether you're trying to overcome it or not, to actually accepting it, embracing it, and going it into the world, declaring, having it, wild party behaviour. It's about the behaviour. There's things that we've come out of the world with, cravings and bad habits that Yahushua is working on us all to try and overcome. But there's a difference between trying to overcome things to just let loose and declaring that these things, there's nothing wrong with them. Fits of rage, jealousies, idolatry, drugs, hatred, drunkenness, wild parties. Do you know what I'm saying? Yahushua does not condemn us. He's always lifting us up and encouraging us to keep going. Those who are experiencing Yahushua through the portal archway know this to be true within. And these are the bride, not those following a list of requirements that were only relevant 4,000 years ago for a Levitical priesthood and then have built religious movements around them. That's not Yahushua's bride. No, they are those who are really cherishing their relationship with Yahushua as their great high priest after the order of Melchizedek. Cherishing their relationship enough to read his words and ask him, do you really want me to do this specific instruction in my day, Father? Or have you breathed life into it and transformed it into a behaviour for me here today? Because I want to serve you and please you no matter what. So it's not just about blindly obeying something, ink on a page, and then feeling like I can't be wrong if I just obey it. There's no such thing as over-obedience. There's no such thing as too much obedience. Yes, there is. There is if it's not required for you anymore, because you're making a mockery out of Yahushua. You're slapping him in the face saying, I don't really know what you want me to do, so I'll just do what it says on the page. And he'll be like, well, why don't you spend some time with me and listen to my voice while reading, and I'll tell you what I want you to do. And I'll tell you what's relevant for you today, because we don't all know. I didn't know most of this until I dived into Leviticus. So each book we go into is just unlocking my brain more and more and more. It's all about the portal connection, dear brothers and sisters. How strong is your Wi-Fi signal? Because He's set it all up and the door is open, the portal is open. How strong is your connection? How strong is your Wi-Fi signal? That's what young people do now. Before they even say hello to you, they're like, what's your Wi-Fi password? That's all they care about, the Wi-Fi password. Well, how strong is your Wi-Fi? How strong is your connection through the portal? For without our higher connection to the throne room of Yahushua, what is the purpose of His death and resurrection? That's what He came to do. Conquer death, the most abnormal abomination that there is, death. He can't be in the presence of death, so He came to conquer it. Open the portal to life. How can we ever know Him if we have no real living day-to-day communication? So come boldly, guys. Come out from among them all and approach me. Come, all you who are heavy, burdened, broken and lost. Come to me and I'll give you shalom. An overall sense of well-being, peace, health, favor and rest. Just go to the Father. Put off everything like the prodigal did. He had broken, lost, had nothing. And declared, even my Father's lowest servants and animals get treated better than this. And he went back, and how was he received? So come boldly, guys. Come boldly to the throne room. Be received by your Master and Deliverer and Father and Lover and Bridegroom.